When Ryan's when it's time to begin, it's on the Rewind Around with John Pollock and Wai Ting. The A-Team that makes sense of these things we see in the ring every week on TV. It's Rewind Around for Monday night, download it Tuesday morning from the Post Wrestling site. It's Rewind Around for Monday night on USA Now on the John and Wai Take the Mic.
Hello, everybody. It is John Pollock. Sorry, I had to X the link out for everybody to listen to. Hello, Wai.
Hey,
Welcome
John,
to one of our rewind shows.
Rewind Raw is the show tonight. It is a Monday evening. Welcome, everybody. Welcome, John.
Oh, I want to say how much I enjoyed not recording anything this weekend. I feel so recharged. Last week destroyed me. Okay, last week I was exhausted from wrestling as a whole. This week I actively tried to watch as little wrestling as possible.
Braden Harrington actually invited us out to a Demand Lucha show in town, and John's response was, "I'm wrestling out. I won't be joining you."
That was it. I'm like, I am not spending my one afternoon this week watching more wrestling. So I am not demanding lucha, and I was not demanding wrestling on Sunday, but I'm sure it was a great show.
Well, I hope you're set for this week, because it feels like every single weekend there's going to be a whole lot, especially with G1 coverage keeping up and everything else. SummerSlam coming up next week.
You know what's wild is that this week is going to be crazy, and that I'm looking at the following weekend when we go to Detroit. Like, it's going to be a break because we won't have to go cover everything. It's like in Detroit, we're going to go to a show on Friday and we're going to go to a show on Saturday.
Well, yeah. I mean, the travel is going to add a little bit, and I do think we will be talking about the GCW show. We'll be attending, maybe a little bit of SmackDown as well, but it's going to be a different type of busy, I think.
Probably, but nonetheless, we are in the midst of a G1 season, and the place to be is postwrestlingcafe.com. That is just receiving rave reviews because, man, the menu items, they've just been, we're like trying all the experimental donuts that some Tim Hortons get up here. Have you ever been to any of the locations that they try out new?
Yeah, the upscale Tim Hortons that they
Yes.
have around the city. Yeah, I have. They're really not that upscale, but
they're as classy as you could possibly imagine from Tim Hortons. Like,
yeah,
this has.
They might add matcha to something, like a matcha honey curler or like a matcha double. Like, it's nothing that fancy. It's like the one that like is close to your place. I try to get the cold brew all the time. It's always broken. So it's about what you'd expect.
So they have a ways to go. But this week, you won't have a ways to go far for great coverage because we have 4 G1 shows going up on the Café this week: Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Sunday. I will be paired with Wai on Tuesday and Thursday. We've got Bruce and Eric Marcotte as the blind eliminator tandem this week on Wednesday. And then Sunday, it is the reunion of WH Park and Karen Peterson. So you have that to look forward to. We're going to be dropping a double shot Wednesday night, chatting about Bam Bam Bigelow. We are going to have all of our usuals up on the Café, as well as our regular shows. Great American Bash is going down this Sunday, so Braden and Davey will have you covered there. It is a plethora of shows this week on the Post Wrestling Café, which is, this is the time, Wai. This is the time.
This is the time. If something has been keeping you on the fence for the past 5 years, I think the week of July 24th, 2023, this is your time.
So go postwrestlingcafe.com, video.postwrestling.com, and you can find the whole schedule up there on the site. And let us talk about what went down over the weekend. This was a much quieter weekend than the previous one, but still a lot going on. Collision on Saturday night. This is week number 5, and the number will be out on Tuesday. This is going to be one of the more interesting ones because, as we had mentioned, going into this show, the main thing that was promoted was a Trios Championship match that I would say coming out of the show was a I mean, outside of the Billy Gunn deal at the end, I don't think anything memorable coming out of that very quick match. And so CM Punk does wrestle, but it's an impromptu one that is set up in the opening segment. Very un-AEW like when it comes to setting up a match that would be delivered later that evening. But you ended up getting a 28-minute main event with CM Punk and Darby Allin against the team of Ricky Starks and Christian Cage, which was quite the pairings for Collision on Saturday. But more interesting was the reaction to CM Punk throughout the night from this crowd in Newark, New Jersey. It was a fine crowd that they had. They did not fill the Prudential Center, but they were there. They might not have filled the venue, but they were there for Phil. Some were and some weren't. It was a mixture of reactions, not all positive, not all negative. They were very loud, and that was a positive.
Yeah. It really continues the trend of I think I would suggest somewhat unpredictable reactions to CM Punk. Some weeks you kind of get a neutral, pro Punk crowd, and other weeks you get a pretty vocal anti CM Punk and co type of reaction. And we saw it.
FTR got the shrapnel from their association on this show.
I think having FTR paired up against, MJF and Adam Cole probably didn't do them any favors either. So really at this point, we continue to study Collision and to see how AEW is handling those potential CM Punk negative reactions. On the one hand, of course, I think, this is nothing new. Like in professional wrestling, it's happened many times in the past, and you either run with it or you kind of grind up against the audience and continue to maybe I don't know, try to turn them, which I don't think is going to be happening. But in the end, you ask the question, is this negative for your product or is it beneficial?
It's not as long as you are drawing and there's interest for it. I would say Collision, I wouldn't call it this runaway hit, nor is it a failure. It's, I think the 0.2 is sort of the barometer, I would say, for Collision. I think if you're falling under that, it's going to be disappointing. And anything above a 0.20, you're probably pretty happy with realistic expectations. Like week 1, you could hit that 0.3, but I think the sweet spot is going to be 0.2. And as much as this weekend's card is somewhat loaded up, you could say, with the tag title match, they've thrown a ladder match. I'm more interested to see what kind of battle plan do they have to set up the next week when they are up against SummerSlam. This will be their first head-to-head battle with a WWE pay-per-view, and a major one. This is going to be a big SummerSlam. And what kind of card does Collision combat that with? And I would think that you would want a pretty strong lineup known by the time you turn off this Saturday show.
I think it's a really tough task to ask maybe even like the most diehard of AEW fans to not be curious to watch a SummerSlam live. I would think that week at best they can hope for some maybe strong DVR numbers. And it's no reason to throw in the towel. I mean, I think it's important to get people to just continue to even make Collision a priority, even on tape delay. So I hope they announce something strong.
So in terms of the handling of Punk right now, like, are you sensing, like, I don't think this is one where it's so much like Punk is just going with the flow of it. Like, it does feel as though they are trying to direct fans to cheer this guy, which with the exception of the line about the New Jersey Devils, this was all babyface material from Punk. And it felt
felt like an ad lib,
it certainly did, because it went against everything else during that segment that was designed to babyface Punk, and right up until like putting Christian here in the middle of things on top
and
of
pairing him with Darby, of course, and getting Darby to give New Jersey his approval,
which felt very
forced.
Like Darby felt very insincere in that moment, and I think he knew that. Like this is not something my character should be doing, but is to try and take a bullet here. So the FTR one was more interesting because I think that this promo as well was designed to be a babyface run, right down to Dax telling like this childhood story. And it just didn't seem to quite resonate with the audience. But I think the miscalculation was their belief, and this exists. It absolutely exists among some of the fans that have been negative towards the more comedic-based skits on Dynamite, specifically Adam Cole and MJF. I don't think what they realized is that there is a larger number that are loving this stuff, they are also, the numbers are bearing out. They're popular segments. And it seemed like this audience was not going to be booing FTR, kind of denigrating this, like, the dance off on Wednesday, or these things that I think enough of the crowd, whether they were just against FTR, but I think a portion of it too was they like these segments, and it's not this kind of sports entertainment paintbrush that you are trying to get across. Like, this is the antithesis of us, and these are our hard, true wrestling fans here that are going to back us up in this promo.
Well, I mean, I don't know if they should have really been surprised by this reaction, because I mean, these MJF Cole segments are very much babyface segments. I mean, he plays a very insincere babyface, but bottom line is the team is incredibly over. And I think FTR and Dax specifically should have maybe prepared for this type of reaction a little bit better than it felt like he was reacting to.
I think they felt they were going to have this crowd in the palm of their hands, and they were just going to, whether they're Cole and MJF fans or not, in this moment where they are here live in the ring, it would be a pro FTR crowd, and they had to fight this audience. And I think it does set the table that this audience will lean. I mean, FTR will be the heels in this match in Hartford.
I definitely think so.
Like, how can you not, expecting like the double clothesline chant and all the stuff that Cole and MJF do? I just don't think it's going to be one where, like, if the audience is choosing, like, that is going to be their focus.
It could be a double babyface type of reaction. You know, I don't necessarily see them booing FTR actively, but I also don't see them booing MJF and Cole either. So it'll be interesting to see what happens for that reason. As far as, like, you know, CM Punk goes, clearly they're building towards CM Punk versus MJF, you know, with the little teases that Punk continues to throw in there with the bag and everything. And perhaps it's for that reason that they want to be so stubborn about keeping CM Punk a babyface, especially if the, you know, buildup is towards a Chicago or even an All In. It makes you wonder at this point why they continue to be so stubborn about keeping Punk a babyface.
I don't care what your plans are. To me, at this point, between the Cole stuff, like, to me, MJF should be coming out of this as the babyface. I really believe it's time for that. I think that there is going to be enough that if this ultimately is just MJF turning on Cole, like, it'll be fine in the moment, but it does feel as though we're just playing the greatest hits with MJF. Like, we have been down this road many times before, whereas the babyface turn, the audience has been ready for this for almost a year. And I feel in this instance, you could come out of this with MJF as the big babyface that they have been striving to have, that truly top end babyface that you can build this company around. And you have the perfect heel in Punk, but it just seems at the moment they're in opposite roles.
Almost seems like, you know, pretty perfect of a situation for a double turn. But I mean, it depends on when those two might eventually be meeting, because you have to get through this Cole program first with MJF.
So there you go. That is a Collision, and you can get a whole rundown of the show from Kate and John Cena from Saturday night, taking your calls and going through a Collision. We also did a show covering Ring of Honor's Death Before Dishonor, a really great pay-per-view if you went out of your way to purchase the show on Friday. All of our thoughts there. And the NWA podcast, which I think is going to exceed the length of SummerSlam this year.
I think it's certainly going to be competing for it, but people will listen to every single second of that podcast, myself included, eventually, because those three are so entertaining together. And this week they had Ray Williams from the Kings of Sport on joining them too. So a lot of great discussion. I'm about a third of the way through, so I will make my way through the rest throughout the week.
Yes, you can all sit back and hear Chris throw a cold towel over anybody's thoughts about Dominik. And he's he lays it down. His unvarnished thoughts on Dominik Mysterio. All right, G1. We are now 6 shows in. Wai, have you just like thrown your hands up in the air at this point when it comes to G1?
I have not. No. I mean, especially since I'll be talking about tomorrow's show. So I have at least been keeping up with the recommended matches from our various hosts over at postwrestling.com/G1. Again, if you just click on the show links, you always get in the show descriptions the recommended matches. And for me, it's been a great way of at least keeping up with what people might be considering the best of the G1. The idea of watching every single match, I've kind of let go, especially after last weekend. I don't know how people like you do it, John, but God, it's like it's so much.
Well, I thought Friday's card was a really good show. In particular, the 3 matches in a row that we got, I thought Will Ospreay and Kenta was like, of course, Ospreay to me has been the performer of the G1 as we are 6 shows in. This was not just Ospreay having a one-man show. I thought this was the best effort I have seen from Kenta in a long time. Like, Kenta certainly held up his part in this match, and I was very pleasantly surprised at how much Kenta hung with Ospreay. Then Shota Umino and Kaito Kiyomiya had another 20-minute draw. That was really strong, but the match of the show was Kazuchika Okada and Taichi, which might be the match of the tournament so far. I think this and the it was the Hanare and Takagi match.
Yes,
that's what I'm thinking about. Yes.
Or Ishii. Was it Ishii?
Takagi and Ishii had a
Shingo
match
was
on
the first
Sunday.
one.
I didn't put that one at the top level. It was the best match on Sunday, but that was a pretty poor card on Sunday. I thought Sunday was the weakest show of the tournament so far. This was the one that had
he faced Kingston, didn't he, on Sunday?
It was Takagi and Ishii and Hanare and Eddie Kingston.
Okay, well,
Yes.
I'm confusing the 3, but all right.
Yes. Kingston and Hanare they had a very nice match on Sunday. The match of the show was Ishii and Takagi, although I have seen better matches between them, but this was certainly the best match of the show. I was very disappointed with the David Finlay Evil match. I just felt this was one of those where, everyone draws each other in the pool, and this was one where it's the 2 heel factions and they're out healing one another. And I didn't think it was all that spectacular of a match. This was also just a totally dead crowd in Nagano for most of the show on Sunday. We got a really weak Naito Toru Yano match. Goto and Shane Haste was nothing to write home about. Zack Sabre Jr. just entertained himself against Alex Coughlin. So yes, these are the match recommendations from Bruce and Karen, and I would agree with that. These would be the 2 matches if you're going to seek out any from Sunday. But I thought overall the weakest lineup so far of the G1 was
what
Sunday.
they are choosing to headline these nights with is kind of perplexing to me. Like in
they're
trying
putting
to
a lot of like the newer stars that they're pushing, but it's like I look at this show, Evil and David Finlay wouldn't like. I get that they are trying to put David Finlay in the idea that you see him as a headliner, but I mean, this would not have been the match I closed this show off with.
Well, for me personally, I mean, I just want an attractive match to put into these graphics so that people might have a chance of wanting to click on it. And I really struggled with trying to.
You should determine the real main event by what graphic you opt to use.
To be quite honest, I made a graphic for Ishii versus Shingo that I ended up not
used
using.
it. Honestly, you should have used it.
I mean, what's the more attractive matchup to somebody? And that I think that's a bigger question for New Japan. Like, why wouldn't they be booking or at least headlining with the match that's most attractive to the audience?
I think when you look at this, I mean, who are headlining that? Like the last, so we have Finlay and Evil on Sunday. We'll go backwards. Sonata and Yota Tsuji, Ishii and Tamatonga, Okada and Phantasmo, Naito and Jeff Cobb, and Sonata and Hikuleo. So you're seeing a common thread there. It's like it's Sonata, it's the talent that we are rising up, and I think trying to put them in that spotlight. But it is. Yeah. Not always like most times. I don't think it's a big deal, but Evil and Finlay on even a weak show, they were not ending it on a strong note.
Yeah, I respect the champion should be closing, but this is more incentive for everybody to go to postwrestling.com/G1 and keep up with the match recommendations from our host, because that's how you really find out what the real main event is.
So we have 5 people that are still undefeated after 6 days. Sonata is on top of the A block with 6 points. Okada with 6 on top of the B block. Finlay on top of the C block with 6. And then the D block has Jeff Cobb and Zack Sabre Jr. who are tied, and they are going to be squaring off on Wednesday's show in the main event. Zach and Jeff Cobb. I do not have any issue with that main event. So those two, someone's O will go on Wednesday. But Tuesday, which is the show Wai and I will be reviewing in mere hours at Korakuen Hall, we have Will Ospreay against the Great Khan, Shota Umino against Gabe Kidd, Kenta versus Taichi, Chase Owens versus Yota Tsuji, Tangaloa versus El Phantasmo. And did you happen to see the speech that El Phantasmo gave that prior to the show he headlined against Okada last week, right before the show or right before the match, he got the news that his grandfather had passed away. He had been sick for a while, and he gets this news. And this backstage, I don't want to call it a promo, but it was just like Phantasmo leaning into the isolation in Japan and being away from his family and getting this news and turned it into the only love that I receive is from you fans when you cheer my name, and how much it pushes me through these difficult times. And I'm just going stir crazy in my hotel. And it was quite the speech from El Phantasmo that I think was the first time we've seen him in kind of this babyface light in New Japan. That, I mean, he's been playing this babyface character for a long time, but this speech was the first time that I think he really, created that connection with the audience beyond the in-ring portion.
And when we say the audience, we don't necessarily mean the people in the room, because I wonder how many people like understand these English promos when he's speaking backstage there. But it's
probably none. They were probably all just nodding and having no idea that he was pouring his heart out.
Right. It's the people that are watching afterwards. And I hope a lot of people end up checking this one out, because like you said, John, it was the most passionate I've certainly heard him speak. And you can understand why, given those circumstances. Incredibly trying, to do your job, after what sounds like one of the most important people in his life had passed away. And
almost the exact same thing happened with Matt Cardona, who's over in Japan at DDT, and said that one of his grandparents just died, and he's missing the funeral because he's off in Japan. So just like both people in Japan and missing, I'm sure a funeral that Phantasmo is going to miss as well. So he's taking on Tangaloa on Tuesday. Hikuleo against Ren Narita, Kazuchika Okada against Yoshihashi, and the main event is Sonata against Kaito Kiyomiya. So Sonata has 6 points. Kiyomiya has 5 because he has 2 wins and a draw. So that's a very appealing main event with Sonata and Kiyomiya. Sonata hasn't blown the doors off of this tournament yet. He needs a big performance, and Kiyomiya has had some excellent performances.
Oh, Sonata's been definitely overshadowed by, any of the Three Musketeers, as well as, Kaito Kiyomiya. But this match is going to be interesting, just given the Budo influence for both men. I'm sure plenty of reference will be given. But A Block has been a lot of fun for me, personally speaking. And also the block, of course, with Shingo and Ishii and Eddie Kingston as well.
And probably the big match this week is Thursday with Okada and Will Ospreay in the main event at Oda Ward Gymnasium. So that is one of the big matches that is coming up in just a couple of days. 3 days in Tokyo in a row.
Wow. While we're on the subject of tournaments in Japan, I wanted to give a shout out to Karen Peterson's Stardom 5-star Grand Prix primer. Is this not the worst time to have if you're a Japanese wrestling company, to have a round robin tournament?
The answer is there is never a bad time during the year for a Japanese company to do a round robin tournament. And this one is just going to go. I think this tournament is scheduled for about 2 years.
Oh, goodness. Well, if you want to get caught up, or at least, get prepared for it as best as you can, we always are incredibly privileged to have Karen Peterson's writing on our site. Some of the best Stardom coverage you'll see in the English language on the internet. So check that out right now under the exclusive section at postwrestling.com.
Yeah, and that first show I've not seen the first show, but it sounded like it got tremendous reviews. And the 5-star Grand Prix is always, I always point to that and the Cinderella tournament as, if you want to seek out Stardom, these are some great jumping on points during the year.
Really unfortunate.
It's just a long tournament to keep up to date with, because this one is going to go into, I think it goes into late September, if not October.
And a really unfortunate injury in this first night to Saya Kamatani off of a dive off of this sort of we've seen Will Ospreay dive off of the truss and everything, and seems like she's dislocated her shoulder. So how is the rest of the booking going to be adjusted as a result?
Yeah, these are all booked down to every match. So an injury it's a house of cards to rebook these things. So yes, that will be focused on as we move forward in the 5-star Grand Prix. Roosh has re-signed with AEW. He posted up a video with Tony Khan. They hugged, signed, then another hug. So Roosh is staying with AEW. Does this at all surprise you?
I guess I wasn't aware that his contract was up, because I suppose the timing does work out. He's been around for a year. Is that it? What did this give you any indication of what his prior contract with AEW was?
I mean, the length, it had to have been, I don't know when exactly it was up, but
because I feel like Rooster's just debuted, but I guess time flies, when you're in AEW.
Maybe Tony Khan had been wanting to sit down with him, and he kept thinking, it's we're in no Roosh.
Very good. Very good.
So Roosh is sticking around. SmackDown on FS1 Friday night. So this did, in fact, end up being the most watched SmackDown on FS1 from their various airings on FS1 since 2019. 1,230,000 viewers, 0.36 in the demo, with that coming courtesy of Brandon Thurston at WrestleNomics. The previous high was 1,032,000 viewers, so a healthy bump up, and that was back in October of 2021. And surprise, surprise, the rules of engagement, the new contract signing, was the big mover on Friday night, because that final quarter generated an 18% increase in viewership and a 23% jump in the 18 to 49 demo for these two men to come forehead to forehead and set up the tribal combat match for SummerSlam. And if WWE is not selling these lays come SummerSlam weekend, they're out of their mind.
Oh, would you buy one? Would you wear one?
I wouldn't, but a lot of people would. You put a $30 price tag on those things.
Oh, 30? Are you kidding me? They'd be at least
I might be going
$60.
conservative knowing this company.
Yeah,
but that's the real championship in the company that is being contested for.
If you want to cosplay as Roman Reigns this year, you need to buy 3 championship belts and the lay.
Mm-hmm. This is going to be a SmackDown that I am sure is going to be highlighted next week. They're doing the earnings report next week, and I'm sure this is going to be one as they are shopping SmackDown. And look, we move 1 week and we got the word out on all of our broadcasts, and our audience moved, and they retained over half the audience from the week prior. So that's a big feather in their cap, and it was a big SmackDown. It's not like they just, threw in the towel because they're on cable for the week. It was a big show, and they got a big result as a result of it. And that's too many results being thrown in there. Rampage also up from the week prior, 415,000 viewers, which was up 34% in viewers, and a 0.11 in the demo. That was up 14%. So it was a 3-week high for the show. 18 to 34 was up 46% this week, mainly for the Royal Rampage, which is what took up like almost 3/4 of the show. This was a really long Royal Rumble style match that was won by Darby Allin, and then featured Chris Statlander and Marina Shafir for about 5 minutes at the end of the show. So for Rampage, it's still there on Friday nights. I don't have too much more to say about this other than,
does it surprise you that, like, going up against Ring of Honor, it still managed to grow?
Maybe a little bit. What was more notable is they went head to head with an immediate replay of SmackDown on FS1, and the SmackDown replay did the same demo number as Rampage did. So that to me would have been even more like direct impact on Rampage, because I just find it to be a pretty small number that we're probably watching that ROH pay-per-view. But yeah, they did have to contend with SmackDown like a replay.
Well, I mean, how do you read that number? Are you happy that it did well going up against ROH, or should you be upset that more people that typically watch AEW aren't watching the ROH shows?
I think that if you are TBS or TNT, I should say, and you're looking at this, and Royal Rampage, I was looking at the number that they did last July for the show, and it was not all that much bigger than this, but they did a 0.16, and that was the first week of July last year that this Royal Rampage aired. So if you're looking at, why didn't we do a 0.16 like we did last year? My answer would be the SmackDown replay, but you could very well look like we're going against ourselves. And would that be the difference in a 0.04 in the demo or 0.05? You could make that argument if you wanted to. And that's why they probably don't want to make a giant billboard for Wednesday nights for a pay-per-view that goes up against one of our shows that we are still actively promoting.
Well, I asked you this off air after we did our Death Before Dishonor pay-per-view recap, but what, is there a reason why they aren't going on Sundays with these ROH events?
I guess they must feel that Fridays are a superior night for them. I don't know why they wouldn't run Sundays. I think that would be, if in fact running these Friday nights at all affects their ability to promote on TBS or and they might outright just not want a ton of ROH promotion. Like, why are we allowing real estate on our shows for, the reason there is a tie-in, these pay-per-views do air on BR Live in the States. So there is that tie-in to ROH with WBD. But yeah, you could certainly argue, like I would look at ROH pay-per-views. If you are someone that is committing your $30, I don't think the night of the week is going to affect that. I think it's a pretty dialed in audience that would be open to moving to Sundays. The problem is you would run into, at least for Final Battle, would be you're up against the big Sunday night football game that you would avoid on a Friday. But maybe that's not as big a concern as running against your like SmackDown and your own programming that might take more of a dent out of your number for a real diehard product like Ring of Honor is. And the next 2 nights we've got NXT. So Rhea Ripley and Dominik are going to start the show. So they are back on. We will see if we get a big draw Dominik again, if he can propel NXT to another big number. Gable Steveson decides his future.
Right. And so can this be anything but he's going to stick around in NXT?
Maybe he's going to come out and say, I'm going to AEW. I've gotten a better offer. I'm out of here. It would be very odd for him to announce that he is not choosing pro wrestling to do this in NXT. I guess in a way, like if he said, I'm going to win the Olympics. I mean, the thing is, this crowd in the Performance Center, he could announce that I'm still thinking about it, and they'd probably still go nuts for him. Like this audience is, they're a happy bunch in this Performance Center. But it would seem logical that he's there for a big pop and probably to shoot an angle too, to, you know, could you see him like just announced as soon as like he's wrestling this Sunday at Great American Bash? Or
I mean, if he did, would that not maybe surprise a lot of people about how much training he's actively been doing? Because I haven't really heard that much buzz about him being sort of like, I mean, you could be ready, you can craft a match around anybody, honestly, and he can do spots.
Get by doing an 8-minute match,
right?
And you put him in there with somebody like a Drew Gulak, that would be, you know.
But to what aim if he's going to be gone training for the Olympics shortly after? You know, what's the benefit, I guess?
If he was disappearing for, I don't know. Like, I'll see you all later. Like, I would say, honestly, like if he was off to go for another gold medal, I would certainly question if he would ever be doing pro wrestling. And he seems more involved now than he has been for the longest time. So it would seem that, you know, he would be sticking around doing this. And if he is committing to doing this, I think his days in NXT are going to be numbered. Like they're going to want him above and beyond on Raw or SmackDown pretty soon. Carmelo Hayes, Trick Williams, and Ilya Dragunov against The Schism, and Dana Brooke against Cora Jade. Dynamite on Wednesdays in Albany, New York. They have announced Moxley and Claudio Castagnoli against the Lucha Brothers and Best Friends. Britt Baker against Taya Valkyrie. Swerve Strickland versus Darby Allin. Orange Cassidy against AR Fox for the international title. MJF and Adam Cole will speak. And Pac versus Gravity.
Which feels like it's the most buzzed about match.
I mean, this should probably just go on last, shouldn't it?
Oh, of course, yeah.
That is the lineup for Albany. Do you sense is this a big Dynamite?
Doesn't feel that big. Certainly coming off of Blood and Guts, I don't necessarily see interest increasing. But I don't know, like ratings surprise me every single week, so who knows?
You're not going to give us a bold prediction right now. Exactly. Down to the 10th of a ratings point, what they get.
I leave that to you and Brandon.
Let's go on to Raw from Monday at the Amalie Arena. Huge. I think, you know, they were like right at 11,000 tickets out. So this, I believe, did they announce this was sold out on the broadcast?
I wasn't paying close enough attention
because it may have been. This was a giant crowd for them in Tampa. And the Judgment Day start this off, and it's Balor, Priest, and Rhea in the ring, and they give a big introduction to Dominik for his big conquering of the North American Championship. So he comes out, and he is booed loudly and throws to his own video highlight when Owens and Zayn interrupt, and Owens says that they did the same thing last week and screams at Dom for not learning his lesson and wants him to just shut up. That would be what he can do for this business. Zayn says how no one respects him, but Dominik can earn that respect by facing him tonight. And just like they put the titles on the line last week, tonight Dominik can put his title on the line, and Rhea Ripley accepts.
Mm-hmm. Pretty hot segment. Anytime you center it around Dominik Mysterio and this incredible reaction that he typically gets in almost every town, but Tampa tonight was, I felt, a really, really great crowd. So it's a little bit maybe surprising that they're choosing to focus so much on something that is really an NXT like event, but this is really more about Dominik having a belt on his shoulder than anything. And I think they're doing a really great job of milking the value out of this North American title win.
And I think they want to get that rub on NXT as well. On top of it, I think they want to recreate what they were able to do last week. Becky Lynch against Zoey Stark with Trish Stratus in the corner. So if Becky wins, she gets a rematch. If she loses, she has to thank Trish and get tattooed.
Mm-hmm. The tattoo stipulation was really not on any of the marketing material. Now,
No.
I believe Becky was on, what is it, one of their talk shows and was probably talking about it there. You had Becky, one of the commentators mentioned it here. But beyond that, like, it didn't appear on any of the graphics. And I guess I could forgive them for not being able to include all of that onto a graphic. But it also felt like a pretty understated part of this entire storyline.
Yeah, it was as much of a wink and a nod to this is the final hurdle before we can announce this match that everyone knows they're getting at SummerSlam. Yeah. So that said, I thought that these two had a really good match together. And I thought Zoey Stark, this was like one of her more involved matches that she was able to have, like a real match here with Becky that went 10 minutes. And they gave Zoey a lot here before losing. Some of the key spots, Trish headbutted Becky with her face mask on. That leads to a near fall. And man, this crowd was biting on a lot of these near falls. The disarmer is applied and Starks lifts and slams Becky. Then Stark misses with a Phoenix splash. And then there's a roll through ending in the disarmer. But Trish throws her face mask into the ring. And while this person is in a submission, this referee turns his back to the submission to remove the face mask and warn Trish.
Well,
could this guy look like more like a goof?
It's a safety of the performers. You can't have a random face
What if
mask
she
in there?
snapped her arm in the submission and your ref is busy chatting with Trish and removing a face mask from
two referees?
Two refs.
Yeah.
Well, Stark escapes and then Trish is knocked off the apron by Becky. Stark then springboards into the manhandle slam and Becky wins in 9:50 to get her rematch with Trish Stratus.
A good match from these two. I'm in agreement with you. I mean, for me, as silly as that tattoo stipulation was, it actually did help me get into these near falls a bit more, knowing that at least in story, Becky Lynch is trying not to get a tattoo on her chest. So it made these kickouts maybe a little bit more exciting, even though I knew the conclusion. But this felt very much, and this is the only time I'll ever compare it, it felt like an Undertaker streak match where you know the outcome, but I mean every kick out you just get into because there's that 1% chance she could actually get a tattoo on her chest. Built to some nice near falls here and good use of Trish ringside as well. So quick pace in this one. Yeah, it was a good match and Zoey looked great too.
Cody Rhodes came out. So this was interesting. Last Monday, they did the spot with Brock where he put Cody in the Kimura and they didn't make like the same big deal out of it as they had prior when he broke the arm. But if you look closely, the next day he's doing the screening of his documentary and he's wearing a brace. Mm-hmm. And tonight he came out, no brace. And thus we're not doing the arm injury again. But I guess Tuesday, there's the chance of it because he was selling this at the premiere.
Well, it's one of those injuries where you heal faster the more your arm breaks. I don't know, dude.
Yes, remarkable recovery in 7 days.
I guess it's the type of injury that only lasts like 4 days, so 4 or 5 days.
Well, he goes over the attack last week that happened in front of his mother and calls Brock Mr. SummerSlam. Someone will have to document the history of Brock Lesnar at SummerSlam. I guess he's had some big matches at SummerSlam. And said his mom wasn't impressed last week. She's a woman that saw Terry Funk throw fireballs at his father. And this made me think, oh boy, this is the next step.
Fireballs?
They're in Detroit, the home of the Sheik. If ever there's going to be a fireball spot, it's going to be in Detroit.
Fireball match. Okay. Brock Lesnar with fireballs. That's a scary
What could
sight.
go wrong?
Yeah.
It's going to be the return of Great Balls of Fire.
Oh.
Another Brock pay-per-view. Yes. So Lesnar made a mistake by leaving him breathing. He's going to embarrass Lesnar and said, I'm not poking the bear. I'm slapping it. And this ends at SummerSlam.
Mhm. Really good, passionate promo from Cody. Honestly, he didn't really say a whole lot here that advanced the story in any significant way. But
We've got a match, and we still have a match, and I'm going to win the match.
pretty
for my
much
mom.
direct translation of what Cody said here. But
And next week, Brock is going to respond to this. That's what
I wonder what
know.
Brock is going to say. What in-depth storytelling is Brock going to add to this? I wonder. But I think a Cody promo is always worthwhile because you get to see with what little content he really has to actually like give out there, how much he could do with it. Because in Cody's hands, this felt like just incredibly charismatic and really strong. And it's a great chance to see the guy's command of the crowd with his great fluid delivery. So it's a great performance without without a whole lot of material that he had to work with.
Maybe Brock is going to give us a really eloquent interview next week. He's going to come in and he's going to say, Cody, I've been wanting to wrestle you since you left this company the first time. And I've been waiting for 7 years like an itch.
God. Oh, man.
And you're going to be my 7-year bitch.
One of the all-time corniest lines I feel like I've heard on this pro wrestling product, and we will get to that. That's our main event tonight, everybody.
Yes, Finn's freestyle is coming your way. Jackie Redmond catches up with Ricochet, who makes fun of Logan for being popular from YouTube, and he's going to save what he has to say to Logan to his face later on. Dominik, Mysterio, Sami Zayn for the North American Championship. This was a nice match for the time that they had here. Rhea and Priest were distracting, and then Owens gets involved and complains to the ref. So Kevin Owens is ejected, and then Rhea and Priest get ejected. So Dom is concerned. He's left all by himself. Graves mentions X and how Elon Musk is a dirty Dom guy, and Kevin Patrick says, I'm not surprised. Dom then counters a Blue Thunder Bomb with a head scissors, or at least tried to. And then Zayn ducks a 619, hits the Blue Thunder Bomb, and Dom eventually lands a 619, crowds into the near falls. Frog Splash lands on Zayn's knees, and as he's setting up for the haluva kick, he stops because Zayn sees Priest and Rhea attacking Kevin Owens at the entrance, and he is just frozen. He cannot take his eyes off of Kevin Owens and gets rolled up by Dominik in 12 minutes. And once again, everyone is like so concerned about LA Knight. It's like, dude, they beat Sami Zayn like a drum in these matches, like week after week after week. And I see much more of a higher ceiling for a Sami Zayn than I do an LA Knight, with all due respect. I think LA Knight is doing just fine. I would say he's in better standing than Sami Zayn at the moment.
Yeah. And maybe to that, I would say it really does feel like Sammy's time to kind of break through to that next level has kind of passed at this point. I mean, they can always ramp him back up, but right now I don't really see that much clamoring for people wanting to see Sami Zayn become a world champion, for instance, or even beat, Seth Rollins for his world championship. Like, he seems very firmly established at his level, and I think we've all kind of accepted that. Whereas LA Knight, we all see the next level right in front of him that I think we all want him to reach. So maybe you'll get a lot more, complaints for that reason. But this was a good match. Very invested crowd as always with the Dominik Mysterio match, and predictable finish here with the distraction. I wasn't so mad at it this time, but giving it to us back to back would maybe change my mind in the next match.
Ricochet is looking for Logan Paul. Nakamura has not seen him, and then Nakamura turns into Ciampa, who is willing to let things go from last week. He acknowledges, I got involved in your match and I deserve that shot that you gave me. You got a free one in, but I better not see you get involved tonight or else we're going to have a problem. And Nakamura was looking for a problem. Judgment Day walk up. They start bullying Akira Tozawa and Apollo Crews, and Dominik demands respect. Tozawa just takes off, but Crews stands up to him and sets up a match with Damian Priest later in the evening. Bronson Reed, Tommaso Ciampa. Okay, I thought these two had a phenomenal match, but man, this crowd was for 80% of this. They were so dead. Yeah. I thought like these guys were out there trying to have like their own G1 match, and it was like, I'm watching this. I was like, this is a very good match, and this crowd could not care at all. And I think that it's more a testament And you see this more when you're attracting like these larger crowds that Raw's like who they see as stars and who they see as just filler. And unfortunately, these two, I think, are more the latter, at least perception wise.
Oh, they're very much in the mid card, if that. I think Reed, they've done a good job of building up this tsunami, but that's one move that everybody might be looking forward to. And you gave them what was this, like a 10 plus, 15?
Almost 13.
Yeah, like I thought even for me, John, this was a little bit too long, just given how little I kind of cared about the characters at the time.
Well, it dragged because of the crowd, but they did get them towards the end. It's a testament to them. But some of the highlights here, like Reed was just running over him here after an avalanche. There was a ripcord power slam by Bronson. And then Ciampa finally gets a reprieve when he hits an inverted DDT, hits a rolling elbow and a Kotaro crusher. And Reed then stops a sunset flip by just sitting down on this guy's chest. And Ciampa pops up. They trade strikes. And Ciampa needs 2 attempts, but he finally lifts and drops Reed. And when he does so, the crowd was like, wow, he did it. And they started to awaken. And just like that, as I'm like, they finally got this crowd, outwalks Nakamura. I'm like, of course. And Ciampa leaves the ring to warn Nakamura, don't take one more step. And with that, he turns around, he's hit with a shoulder block and the tsunami and loses in 12:47 and looked brilliant in doing so.
Yeah. Good action, but again, like I think pro wrestling is a lot more than just good action. You need compelling characters and compelling storylines, and unfortunately, I don't think Ciampa nor really Reed have had it. Like, what has Reed's like stories been? Getting involved in like people's matches, right? Like
he's big Bronson Reed now.
Yeah, he's Mr. Nice Guy. He's big Bronson Reed. There's just really not that much to kind of like sink your teeth into with him, and it's clear that they've completely dropped the whole Miz thing, right? Attached to either of them.
Yeah, there was no Miz on this particular program. Byron Saxton meets up with Liv Morgan, and she confirms Raquel has a knee injury and she is not here tonight, but Liv says she'll be back soon. Tonight, Rhea is all hers and blames her for the reason they lost the tag titles last week. And she is the last person to beat Rhea Ripley.
So she's the Baron Corbin to Roman
She is
Reigns.
in the Baron Corbin spot.
Right.
Green and DeVille enter, and they start to complain about everything around here revolving around Rhea. So Rhea shows up, and they get scared and run off. And this was our whole involvement of our tag champions on this show. This was about 20 seconds worth.
Tells you how, like, maybe how much of a joke, unfortunately, these tag titles are when they're on comedy characters.
That's what they're going to be. Liv Morgan comes out, and somehow Rhea Ripley is ringside here and just jumps her. I guess she came from the crowd and destroys Liv. And Corey Graves goes, this is what would happen if Oppenheimer happened in Barbie Land. And Rhea destroys Liv, wraps a chair around her arm and stomps the chair. And Liv is screaming. The trainers come out. Rhea's yelling, get out of my business. Have fun in rehab. And then she stomps the chair a second time, which was a little overkill. This was effective with the one, but they've got to really hammer it home. I thought this was a very strong angle. I thought both were very effective in their roles. I thought Rhea was great and Liv selling was very strong. This is everything this needed to be. And next week you can set up Rhea and Raquel.
Agreed. Totally agreed. I thought it was great use of, basically Raquel's best friend here. Not even giving a match. I think this is far more effective than, just even having a match. Having Rhea be completely dominant and be completely vicious. I thought her intensity was great, and I thought Liv selling was really good too. I think the only thing that would have made this even more perfect would have been a cutaway to a little kid in the crowd crying for Liv. I so wish there was something like that.
You're just a masochist.
Who doesn't love crying children?
Find tears. Find some tears. Last week, they go over the Viking rules match, and the Alpha Academy react. And Gable suggests a Academy rules match, which to me tells me last week's match went over so well. How can we redo it? And we'll have another weapons match. But before that, Maxine says she has embarrassed Valhalla week after week, or has been embarrassed. No one puts the Alpha Queen through a table and is challenging Valhalla to her first ever singles match next week. And this would be accepted. So that is happening next week in Houston.
So was this 2 sets of challenges?
It It was 2 sets of challenges, but they only announced that Maxine and Valhalla was going to be next week. And this Academy rules match, I would think it would happen next week. There's no reason to hold off on that.
So the Academy rules match is only between the men, and then the women are having their own match.
Yes, right. That's what I took from that.
Right. So what are Academy rules? Chalkboards, they said?
Yeah, he went over the different, it's just going to be scholastic weapons.
Yeah. Okay.
Maybe a diploma.
I'm sure it'll be great. The last one was really good.
They did a great job last week, and if you're going to recreate it, why not? Ricochet is out, and he tells Logan to come show his stupid face and says that the locker room knows he doesn't belong here. But it's not because you're not good or that you haven't done the work. It's because you're an arrogant prick, and they don't respect what you do. And you don't respect what we do and how much time we miss with our families. You will never understand that, Logan. So I'm here to challenge you to a match at SummerSlam. And with that, Logan jumps him from behind because Ricochet was too transfixed on this hard camera that if he had just turned around, like how many attacks tonight were because someone was not looking against the hard camera? Like Liv, you got Ricochet here.
That's why Cody is now turning his back to the hard camera.
He's smart. These baby faces with their blind spots. So he attacks Ricochet and accepts the challenge, takes a selfie, as we're just like stripping Austin Theory away more and more. And
this looked like it was a video, actually, like an attempt at what he did for Crown Jewel, where like he's filming himself and then he's filming himself getting kicked. So I tried to look for the video. It doesn't seem to be up at the time of this recording.
Man, we need like wrestling reels where we can go from this challenge being accepted to Willow Nightingale's father streaming the match on Friday.
Sure. Yeah.
Just all the videos that are taken at wrestling shows. And Ricochet then pops up and super kicks Logan Paul, who, dude, he went down. He just sold this great and takes a standing shooting star. Listen, for years, I have noted Ricochet's lack of verbal ability. He has really made strides. I think this might have been the best promo I've ever heard from Ricochet. I'm not stating this guy's ever going to be Ric Flair, but he has definitely made improvements. And this, like, think of this idea of we're sending Ricochet out there for like a 3-4 minute promo alone in the ring. There is no way that would have happened at another time. And they not only had the confidence, I thought he did more than adequate job.
I kind of feel like he's already been at this sort of level, for some time, but I don't, for whatever reason, I think he's just been so low on the card. He's never really had this opportunity. Clearly, like they see that improvement within him to be able to give him a pretty big match on this SummerSlam card, and not just the match, but they're building him up as a major player. Like he's coming out of all of these segments looking like a big deal. He's coming up looking like the superior dominant babyface over top of Logan Paul. So I think this build so far has been really good for Ricochet, and hopefully the match turns out as great as I think we can all picture it to be.
Do you notice that one of the sponsors for SummerSlam is this C4 energy drink? So do you think that Prime is going to get any focus in this match?
Oh, good question.
Like if I was C4 and I'm sponsoring this show, I don't want Prime. I don't want a billboard for Prime all over this match.
I mean, I think that's a really good question. Maybe, but does Logan Paul
is it banned in Detroit?
Windsor, yeah, I would say yes, but probably not Detroit. So they got Four Loko there, man. Anything goes in Detroit.
I was at the grocery store over the weekend and I looked at the Prime and it was like the Prime hydration. So
yeah,
I don't know if
hydration is not banned.
The hydration is not the issue. It's the regular one. But do you see the regular one in stores? Because I think all this time I've been seeing the hydration.
Same. Yeah. The one in the bottle is the hydration. The one in the can is the energy drink.
Oh, gotcha. Okay. Yeah. Now I understand. Jackie Redmond is
get with it, John. Get with the.
I'm trying my best. I do not want to try this stuff, especially when I heard how much it's like they said like the equivalent of like 6 cans of Coke in it. That sounds disgusting.
Yeah, I mean, I don't drink those things anyways.
I don't think I've had a can of Coke in a decade.
Well, I mean, at the same time, I feel like you and I both drink a lot of coffee, and I'm sure it's not at a healthy level either.
Let's see who lives longer. Okay.
Okay. Sure.
Baszler is going to speak in the language that Ronda knows. I thought she was just going to go off and cram 1,000 words into the next 30 seconds. She is going to settle it at SummerSlam with a fight against Ronda. Then this was just amazing. One of the themes for SummerSlam is Steppenwolf, Born to be Wild.
Yeah. Well, what's so amazing? I mean, they've done this in the past, like just pull out a classic, you know?
This is like, we're just pulling a song out of like the 60s.
So, I mean, AC/DC was the theme song for SmackDown for years.
I mean, it was just very random song to pick.
I feel like they've kind of done this type of thing in the past, and we know, like, you know, I'm sure Triple H is really into classic rock and all this stuff.
I think Hunter was like born around the time he was born to be wild. He was born right around when the song came out. Saxton is with Logan Paul, who calls it unprofessional what Ricochet did, and I feel victimized. And next Monday, he's coming for Ricochet in Houston to pop his stupid bald head. That's a lot of traveling for such a specific objective when you do have a match with him. If you could just wait another week, but I guess can't wait. And he's going to lose his SummerSlam match. If he pops his head, that's not a Cody Rhodes recovery in 7 days.
I'm sure he won't.
Did you hear what Logan Paul is trying to do? He wants to go on first at SummerSlam so he can fly to Dallas for his brother's fight that night with Nate Diaz, from Detroit to Dallas.
Wow, really?
Which sounds ultra ambitious.
Yeah. Well, what time would he possibly be able to go on to be able to make the match? Like, how's that timing going to work?
Okay, at the earliest, they would get into the ring at like 10 after 8, you would think.
So SummerSlam starts at 8 and not 7.
Correct.
Okay.
It's an 8 Eastern start. Let's say they're on first. I don't think there's any way that match is over before 8:20.
Well, he's not out of there till 9.
And he's got to go on a flight. I mean, you can do the math of like Detroit to Dallas is not just like a hop on and like that's a I don't know. He's obviously done the Google Maps on it, but that seems like a real tight squeeze. Like that fight, I'm thinking, is probably going to get into the ring around midnight Eastern. So we're looking at he's probably got about 3 hours to get there to the arena in traffic and be ready and be of some value to his brother in his corner.
A nonstop flight is like 3 hours. It's from Detroit to Dallas. So I think he's watching this on pay-per-view.
Well, I think he's getting like his own, like he's like chartering a flight. So that might.
I mean, okay, fine, but like, how much faster is that chartered flight going to be than, you know, one of these? And
maybe they'll hold off on the fight till he gets there.
Can they?
I mean, his brother's co-promoting it. He can pull the.
Can they park the jet on top of the building or something?
Well, I've been to Dallas. It's not as though you just get dropped onto the American Airlines Center. I mean, it's a tough travel that's a long travel day for Logan Paul, but hey, he's going to try and make it. Damian Priest against Apollo Crews. This went 3 minutes and 13 seconds. Broken arrow, 2 count, and then he fell to the south of heaven. So the point here, the bullies win.
Like, if you're Apollo Crews, are you wishing you're still back in SmackDown and having visions right now?
Well, I wish he did have visions, because he probably wouldn't have picked this fight if he knew what was in store for him.
So the worst,
an hour into the future.
The worst thing about this, like, Apollo Crews character on Raw is that his character right now is that he has clarity as a result of him being a parent. So his whole gimmick is that, like, he's doing this for his kids, and it's probably about the worst gimmick you could have if you're a jobber and your role on the show is
gimmick?
to lose.
I'm a father.
Yeah, and you lose every time, you know. So I mean, I don't know how he's going to play this. Like, I mean, he's showing, you know, his children what it means to lose and to keep coming back, I guess.
Remember, didn't he say in that first promo back that when he was doing the character on SmackDown, his kids stopped watching wrestling? They might not even be back. They might be lapsed fans. The Viking Raiders and Valhalla, they accept the challenge. Imperium come out and are followed by Drew McIntyre, and he wants to face Gunther right now, but Gunther calls these fans degenerates, and he is not going to wrestle in front of these people. I mean, it is, he's not, Gunther doesn't strike me as a fan of Florida. So Drew,
he probably lives there, doesn't he? Like,
probably does, and that's probably when he knows firsthand what he's getting into here. Drew doesn't get anything done in life, just like these people. You failed at Clash at the Castle. I humiliated you at WrestleMania. So, Drew, if you want to ride my coattails, I will accept the match for SummerSlam and humiliate you again. They're giving a lot more mic time to Gunther. And I think that this guy, I think he is like one of the more like solid performers they have at the moment. That doesn't always sort of, when you shortlist people that are really hitting it on all cylinders, his name doesn't always come up, but I think he's been tremendous.
I think for the character that they're trying to portray Gunther as, like the way he speaks is absolutely perfect. Yeah.
Drew says that he first met Sheamus when he was 19 and Sheamus was 42. And they had a dream of wrestling each other at WrestleMania. And they got that dream this year, but it was a three-way match, and they let their personal issues affect the outcome because Gunther just stood around and picked the bones. It was like, I don't think anyone was just like taking the easy path during that match, which was probably the best WWE match this year. And he says he's going to beat Gunther's ass at SummerSlam. Ludwig Kaiser interrupts, and Drew says, Ludwig, I like you because unlike Gunther, you have charisma. You should be the leader of Imperium. And it sets up a match between them where Drew wants him to be the leader and Ludwig is fighting for his ability to be a strong number 2, I guess.
I think Ludwig Kaiser is fantastic.
Well, he has now become a new sensation because of Corey Graves, who has obviously been working. He has been fine-tuning this Ludwig Kaiser impression, and he went all out here because how many singles matches does Corey Graves get to call with Ludwig Kaiser? Probably not too many, but I don't think there will ever be a Ludwig Kaiser match again that he doesn't bring this out for. He did it 3 separate times and he was just loving it.
Well, I would, say that maybe he pulled it out a little too much, but I mean, it's a really good.
It's a really good one, but you're right. Like, keep them wanting more.
Yeah. Well, as a man who knows a thing or two about impressions, I trust your.
There's a psychology to it. They went through a commercial break. Drew hit an air raid crash off the turnbuckle, and then Kaiser stops him with the Claymore, or as he's going for the Claymore, blocks it, and then moments later, Drew is able to does the countdown, hits the Claymore, and wins in 9:33. But a good win for Drew, and the match was really overshadowed to me by Corey Graves.
Yeah. But I think it's more of sort of like anything for Kaiser to make him stand out. I think is really good because for a long time he's really just kind of like mouthpiece for Gunther. But I think this episode kind of really put into focus his manner of speaking, which is incredibly cartoonish, but incredibly like I guess like memorable and fun. And I'm sure fun to impersonate if you're Corey Graves, it's a very original and unique way of cutting a promo.
The best part is that Corey was doing this impression as Imperium was standing right in front of the desk. So they can obviously hear this. It's so loud, but they had to no-sell it. Anyway, post-match, they attack Drew. Riddle runs down. He gets powerbombed, just a useless friend. And then Gunther he drops Drew on the floor, clears the desk, but Drew stops Gunther, and it's Drew that lifts up Gunther, powerbombing him through the desk, and then he lifts up the title, confirming he won't be winning it at SummerSlam.
A good segment that continued to make Drew look like a really strong challenger, even though, yes, he probably isn't going to win. But he does feel like Gunther's biggest challenge yet, and I'm sure the match itself alone, even without the championship, is going to elicit enough interest. So I think they're doing a good job building this one.
Jackie speaks to Ronda and says that Shayna wants a fight. Ronda says, I don't get in a fight. I get in the fight. And she accepts. And that was a whole long, multiple days of travel.
I appreciate, John, how you always seem so concerned about everybody's travel schedule versus
I just imagine that, listen, this is your job, okay, and this is what comes with the territory, but I'm just imagining the odds of someone leaving their home on Sunday. They probably have no idea what's scheduled for them, and they get there, and this is what you're here for.
So we should be scheduling everybody into either 20-minute matches or 10-minute promo segments just to justify their travel.
I'm just saying, we have.
There are things you don't see, maybe they're doing autograph signings in the back. I mean, some of these people are working the house show circuit anyway. And
Ronda's just hitting that house show circuit nonstop.
Catering needs to be eaten,
Well, she got to hang out for the day, and she is not in a fight. She's in the fight.
Yeah. So what does this mean? Fight pit? Like, what are we talking about? What's a fight versus a match?
Well, I thought they were going to give some clarity to this. I mean, I hope it means that if one of them's in a submission, that the referee doesn't get distracted by a face mask being dropped in the ring and someone's arm gets snapped.
Maybe they do what is it, NXT Underground? Maybe they take out the ropes. I think
SummerSlam Underground?
Cool. SummerSlam Underground, yeah.
Okay. Detroit Underground. Maybe they're going to go do this on 8 Mile.
They could. It's kind of far, I feel, but I don't know. I don't know Detroit that well.
Yes or no to Edmund making an appearance?
If it's a fight, then I think
we'll get Edmund in one corner and Josh Barnett in the other.
I think that makes a whole lot of sense.
And then Barnett cuts a promo on Masakatsu Funaki for September 3rd.
Ooh, okay. What? That's the match?
Oh yeah, they're doing that.
Wow, that sounds crazy.
Okay, but of the N1.
But the fact that they're calling this a fight and not a wrestling match, I don't think it's a crazy suggestion to imply that it might be some sort of blood sport type of match, you know, as a showcase for what Ronda and Shayna can do together. I'm very curious to see if that's what that means.
Yeah, maybe they'll fly Ronda to Houston, and then Shayna will explain while Ronda just stands and listens to the description.
Yes.
Next week, Brock Lesnar returns, Logan Paul returns, and Valhalla versus Maxine. So people that should be showing up at work are going to be at work, and Valhalla and Maxine. So we'll see what else is happening for you. They're very confident right now in their popularity.
Yeah, like I feel like today, for instance, like on the preview for today, we had like three variations of a contract signing / talking segment, like advertised. You know, you had a face-to-face, you had a contract signing, you had whatever Logan Paul calling out Ricochet. You know, we have a rules of engagement, which is another fancy way of saying contract signing. So how many ways can they say two people are going to be talking?
Yeah. Finn Balor comes out for the rules of engagement for Finn and Seth and says that Adam Pearce was supposed to be here, but his hands are full due to the chaos of Judgment Day tonight. So we're professionals. We can handle this ourselves, which might put Adam Pearce out of a job.
Yeah. Why was Pearce not here? Like, was he actually busy?
No, he was in the back when Liv Morgan was selling the arm injury. So he was there.
Yeah. So like I
don't know why he wasn't out here.
It
was very bizarre. Like Adam Pearce was not here for this. And then for the, where was it? It was the later in this segment, Zayn comes out, but no Kevin Owens, who did get attacked by Priest and Rhea, but it's not, it was like some debilitating taking a guy out kind of injury.
Sean Ross Sapp, at least through some of his tweets, seemed to indicate that it's a legit injury, but they don't know the extent of the injury to Owens. So.
Well, I assumed with Owens there was something going on because, I mean, he was present for the show, but they did not allow him to get physically involved in anything. Like he was thrown out of the match and then didn't do a run in here. So that would all add up. Rollins is out in a white suit. The crowd's singing and says that Finn Balor has no chance of winning at SummerSlam. And even if you did win, your reign would be shorter than your Universal one because Damian Priest would cash in immediately. And you know that's true because you would do the same thing to Damian Priest. SummerSlam is not going to be the coronation of the Judgment Day. It will be the end of the Judgment Day. Balor signs. He's smiling at Seth. And Balor says, "We run this place, not you." And Judgment Day surrounds the ring. And he says that Finn says he has been losing for 7 years, and it's been slowly driving him insane. And it's all because of Seth. It's like a 7-year itch that you just can't scratch. But at SummerSlam, I'm going to make you my 7-year bitch. I couldn't believe. I thought I was like hallucinating. I'm like, there's no way he said that on national television. But man.
Not since Suffering Succotash have I seen so much guts within a man to deliver this with a straight face on national television. This was like so cheesy. It could have like been lifted straight out of like a, Fast and Furious movie. Like, I can't believe this was said.
Make you my 7-year bitch. Because you get it, Seth. It rhymes with itch. So they fight and held in their laughter. And Seth gets hit with the briefcase, and suddenly Damian sees that Seth is out, and he's looking at the briefcase, and Finn is staring at Priest. But before they can act upon it, Zayn runs down with a chair. He gets attacked and hit with the South of Heaven, and they bury him for the second time on the show underneath a desk and chairs. Judgment Day then surround Rollins and hit him with the Razor's Edge. Dominik hits the Frog Splash, and Balor hits the coup de grace, and the Judgment Day all hold up their prizes except for Balor, has nothing. So
he's got his fists here. So he held up his fists.
Yeah, that can take care of his itch.
That's right. Yeah, I mean, some continued teasing of, Balor and Priest and the cash-in. So kind of painting a picture of like, win or lose for Balor, he's going to be losing something, whether it be Judgment Day or his championship. So, yeah, interesting, decent segment here. I would say overall, like, I came out of this show maybe most excited for Gunther and Drew. I feel like that's the program that feels maybe at this point the most serious. The rest, I think, are in all like pretty good shape, but nothing about this particular episode for me really advanced my interest in much of the programs.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, it's interesting when we compare SummerSlam with All In, where SummerSlam, it's not as though they've announced everything and have only gotten around to announcing most stuff like the last week or so, but it feels like for weeks we've known what all the key matches are. So it's sort of just finalizing those, getting the angles ready. And I think it feels like a pretty big SummerSlam this year. They're going to have a big attendance. And I look at All In, and we've still got a month. Like there is time, but it's not so much that they haven't announced the matches, but like I'm not watching the TV and thinking, okay, these are guaranteed our 7 matches, for instance, out of 10 that we're going to get. Like you might have some hints here and there, but I think it's harder to look at AEW's programming at the moment and seeing where this lineup ends up for All In.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's just more maybe Tony Khan's type of, storytelling, isn't it? Like we see certain building blocks for certain matches, but hard to know, especially like what's going to be on All In versus what's going to be on at All Out. And they also have a lot of TV they have to push like in their next 7 days that they're probably more consumed by rather than pushing something, a whole month away. So I imagine we'll get that like maybe 4 weeks out. From All In.
I would think now that Blood and Guts is in the rear view, I think like you would think like this week we're going to start to get at least the movement towards, well, I mean, for MJF and Cole, there's this Hartford match that you have to kind of get through. And that's probably by next Wednesday, you're starting to look at like, what is this championship picture looking like for All In and where you're going? And if they feel like this thing is just taking on a life of its own, and do you pivot? Like I'm sure when this started, you might have had the idea that, okay, they'll team for a month or so and then we do the angle, but could you have predicted that it would have been this popular and is now the time to shoot that angle? It might be, it might not though. Let's do a couple of pieces of feedback before we say goodbye. Muggin.
Let's go to some super chats first, if that's all right, John. And
all right,
thank you,
Muggin,
everybody.
You gotta wait.
Yeah. If you send a super chat, you do get to jump the line. So we thank everybody who is watching us live, and especially those of you who are sending super chats, including Matthew Yanes, who sent $5. Thank you for the support, Matthew. Shout out to John Pollock for his guest appearance on the Gentleman's Wrestling Podcast with Jesse Collins, and shout out to Wai for being you. Well, thank you, Matthew. And yeah, everybody, check out the Gentleman's Wrestling Podcast. John Pollock guested. It
was a great chat. It was fun to do with Jesse. So if you want to check that out, you can go download the Gentleman's Wrestling Podcast. Just go.
What did you guys talk about?
A lot of just sort of the current state of wrestling media. We're seeing a lot more on the record comments from WWE officials, from AEW officials through these press conferences. What have been the positive that have come out from these, the negative, and sort of where things are going on top of that, where, the value of getting some of these like on the record statements in an industry that is still very much like shrouded in secrecy. And you have, outlets that all have sort of different objectives of what kind of coverage they are going for. So we went in a lot of different directions, but it's always enjoyable to hear Jesse's thoughts as well. So if you want to check that out, I really enjoyed this interview quite a bit.
And that's the Gentleman's Wrestling Podcast, available on all your podcast platforms and also on YouTube too, I believe.
Yes.
All right, let's go to Jake from the Windy City, who sends a super chat just to say X. Any thoughts, John?
No, like everyone's like freaking out. Like I don't have any emotional care at all to a name change. None.
I mean, I think it's just like a pretty clear troll job, isn't it? You know, like a lot of his stunts have been, and it just like he seems to feed off of just people talking about no matter what.
So that's fine if that's it seems like a lot of work to generate chat, but I think everyone was just like everyone will be over it in 48 hours.
What's the update on Threads?
I'm not feeling Threads. It's I've kind of dropped it for now.
Why?
It feels like it feels like work to go up there. It certainly doesn't have the I don't know, maybe it's just like my
not enough people, not enough.
It's
drama.
not even that. It's just like why do I have to like feed all of these social media platforms? Like they just want and they don't give you anything back. It's like this stuff's all a hassle for me. I hate tweeting out all this stuff. Why do I have to do more of it? Why do I have to tell people what why do I have to come up with like something witty? I don't want to be witty. I don't want to talk.
You don't have to. You can just like tweet your thoughts out. Like you don't have to make people laugh with every single comment.
I have no purpose for it. That's the main thing.
Gotcha. So. Okay. Well, follow him anyway. I'm John Pollock. In case he feels inspired at some point, I'm sure you would.
Yeah. Like, are you posting on Threads?
No, I'm not.
Like, what would you post there? Would you just copy and paste your?
No, I think you should do something
would be different. What would you what's Threads material that isn't Twitter material?
I think on Threads, I'm going to be very antagonistic. I'm just gonna chime in on every single person's opinion and talk about why they're wrong and why they're idiots.
You should for one night just do a test and like do it on Wednesday night from 8 till 10, and every thread has to start with if this were in WWE. ...
Yeah, exactly.
And then do the opposite on Raw next Monday.
Yeah. Is Cody Rhodes better off in WWE? That's all you have to say, and just watch my engagement rise up. I'm sure. All right. Lastly, super chat here from Kingpin, who sends, I believe this is 100 rupees. So thank you very much, Kingpin. That's a lot of rupees. So thank you very much. Thoughts on reports of Wyatt returning to SummerSlam to cost Cody? Does the promise to embarrass Lesnar mean Lesnar has to win? Cody can't afford to lose, in my opinion.
Anyone could lose. It's not life or death for him to lose. You're keeping him busy till Mania season. So any distractions, I don't worry too much about it. If he loses again, that's fine. He's got an opponent down the road.
I would say they seem relatively protective of Cody, like, WrestleMania aside, but even that could turn out to be just setting him up for next year's WrestleMania. That I feel pretty confident in saying that he's going to win this one. I think he can beat Brock Lesnar and still be able to springboard to a potential feud with anybody else, coming off of it. So I don't think the promise means anything, but you know what? You never know with this company and the way they book. So thank you very much for that super chat. All right. What does Morgan have to say?
What does Morgan have to say? Judgment Day was everywhere the whole night. Dom beat Sami. Rhea put Liv on the shelf. Priest won his match. Morgan also specifies that Rhea attacking Liv was an angle. And then going to business for herself. Shattered her arm.
Yeah, it was an angle. Right.
There you go. Okay, a lot of stuff for SummerSlam got cemented, including Becky Lynch getting her rematch against Trish and Gunther McIntyre as a match of the year candidate. Ronda and Shayna needs to take place in the fight pit. As for who will fight Dom for the North American title, Dragon Lee, book it. Ciampa was a little unruly. Dominik against Dragon Lee. That would be quite.
That sounds great, doesn't it?
Could be. I mean, you've sort of like they did the whole start with this Mustafa Ali deal. So I mean, tomorrow they'll shore up this whole Great American Bash card, and you would think have Dominik involved in this. So that'll probably all get settled tomorrow.
Okay, let's go finally to Brian from New Jersey, who says, Muggin, I think we're due to get Dominik versus Wesley versus Mustafa Ali on Great American Bash on Sunday and have Dom's reign in there. So, some good build for various SummerSlam matches. A lot of good heat for the Judgment Day all night. Rhea is firing on all cylinders. I thought Ciampa and Reed had a nice little hoss battle. my own little Manny from Pacoima moment. I capped off a busy weekend of watching wrestling with the second half of Prestige Wrestling Show on Sunday, streaming on IWTV from Asbury Park, New Jersey. They had advertised Malachi Black versus Kevin Blackwood, but it ended up being Black and Blackwood teaming up in a brief tag team match against Jake Christ and Alan Angels, with some sort of feud going on between Prestige and Wrestling Revolver.
All right. Well, thank you for your Manny from Pacoima moment. And speaking of Asbury Park, New Jersey, Tuesday night, it is Dark Side of the Ring covering Bam Bam Bigelow, the Beast from the East. So we're going to be chatting about that on Wednesday night, the life of Bam Bam Bigelow. So yeah, only a few more episodes of Dark Side of the Ring remaining. 3 more episodes this season, and we go live Wednesday nights, 10 Eastern for Rewind to Dynamite. That's for everyone. And then for the late night crowd, as soon as we're done Dynamite, we flip over to the Café for the double shot and go about a half hour sharing our thoughts on this week's edition of Dark Side of the Ring.
And only one episode left of Secret Invasion. It's the finale this Thursday. So WH Park and Rich will, I'm sure, have either one or maybe even more guests joining them to talk about this one. So can't wait to hear their thoughts on, and maybe all of yours as well. So, do tune into that.
All right. Have you started The Bear?
I finished The Bear.
Season 2?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
I watched it before it came out on in Canada here on Disney Plus. So
how? We live in Canada.
I just
got it last week.
Wonderful, very handy tool that sponsored this show. So
NordVPN. All right, to the rescue. Okay, that's going to wrap things up. Lots of great shows up on the site. Again, you can catch the NWA podcast from Sunday night. We've got Collision Course, a review of the ROH pay-per-view, tons of great stuff. And the G1 shows continue Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Sunday this coming week, all for the wonderful price of $6 for the whole month. It'll take you through the entire G1, through the finals, coming up in mid-August. PostWrestlingCafe.com is where you can go, or video.postwrestling.com, so you can always see Wai Ting in a perfect 4:3 ratio.
Well, it's not always perfect. Let's be honest. I have been having some video issues lately, but not
flawless today.
Not today. Yeah, I even got the graphics up and everything. So
perfect stream. So let's not jinx things and just say good night. Roll the credits.